Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're continuing our Group of 5 conference recaps, and today we are breaking down the Conference USA. There are only a handful of legitimate contenders in the Conference USA this season, and you can really see the separation between the contenders and the teams that might struggle this season in both the East and West Division. We'll start over here in the Eastern Division, where I do once again have Florida Atlantic winning the East, much like they did last year in Lane Kiffin's first year with this Owls team. Devin Singletary is going to be by far the leader for this Owls offense, rushing for 1,920 yards last year. And yes, they did lose their quarterback, and yes, they only returned 5 starters on offense, but they returned 10 starters on defense from a defense that just allowed 22.7 points per game last year. So once again, this is the Florida Atlantic team that I think is probably the heavy favorite in the East, could be the heavy favorite for the entire conference. And with Lane Kiffin there, I don't know how much longer he'll be there. I know he signed a long contract extension, but I think if an opportunity arises for a bigger school, he will jump ship and take that. But right now, he's got the Owls on a good track. They do have tough games, though, on the road at Oklahoma, Central Florida, and Marshall, who is probably going to be their biggest competitor in the Eastern Division. I have the Thundering Herd pegged at 8-4, 7-1 in conference as well. So Florida Atlantic and Marshall both tied in conference play, but Florida Atlantic owning the edge there with a 9-3 record over Marshall's 8-4 record. And Marshall returns 18 starters, one of the more experienced team in all of the Conference USA. They do lose their star quarterback as well, and Chase Litton should be able to replace him with Alex Thompson. They have a solid group of running backs there with Tyler King and Keon Davis, both rushing for over 800 yards. So this is a Marshall team that I really think will be probably the biggest threat to Lane Kiffin and Florida Atlantic in the East Division. Then you move down, and this is where you start to see the break a little bit right after Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee, a team that if they can stay healthy, if they really can stay healthy, will compete against Marshall and Florida Atlantic for the division crown. See, I only have them one game behind both Florida Atlantic and Marshall at 6-2 in conference play. But I have them at 7-5 overall, which isn't great. It's not bad, but it's not great. But you have to keep in mind that Middle Tennessee has to go on the road and play 3 SEC teams. So potentially 60% of their losses this season could come to those SEC teams on the road at Vanderbilt, Georgia, and Kentucky. Last year going 7-6, so obviously if they go 7-5 and win the bowl game, that is improvement. But still, I mean, they have the potential here, especially with Brent Stockstill at quarterback, who is already the #1 leading passer in Middle Tennessee history. They really have a chance to jump Marshall or Florida Atlantic and try to win the East. They do have 17 returning starters as well. But like I said, the key for them is going to be healthy. If they cannot stay healthy, they will not do this well, or they will not be able to challenge Marshall or Florida Atlantic. But if they can, watch out for the Blue Raiders. And I got Florida International down there at 4th. Even though they have a worse overall record than Old Dominion, I had them ahead of them because of conference play, because they would be 500 in conference play compared to Old Dominion's 3-5. Florida International, yes, I know last year went 8-5, had a great season. Butch Davis, one heck of a head coach. And once again, I think we'll have this FIU team going in the right direction, but they lose so many starters. They lose their star quarterback in Alex Mago. They lose Alex Gardner on offense as well. And they only have 4 starters returning on the defensive side of the ball. So I think this is one to be kind of like a rebuilding year for Butch Davis and this Panthers team. Like I said, they're 4th in the division, so not bad, 4-4 in conference play, but I just don't see them going back to a bowl game, and certainly don't see them going back to an 8-5 record like they had last year. Old Dominion, though, I do have finishing 5th in the division, but making a bowl game despite finishing below Florida International. 6-6, 3-5. It was just a couple years ago that I believe Old Dominion won 10 games. Now, certainly that's not going to be the case this year, but they do return 16 starters. And so 2 years ago, they go 10-3. Last year, they go 5-7, so maybe they're poised for another big year. I do think they will get back to bowl eligibility. Hopefully they will receive a bowl invitation, but they certainly have the team to get back there. Stephen Williams was a bit of a shaky quarterback last year, but given this entire offseason to prepare, and I do think he's going to be the strength for this Monarchs team. So Old Dominion going bowling. And I know some people may criticize me for seeing Western Kentucky so low, second to last in the division and 4-8 overall. And I know that is a shock to some, considering the success that the Hilltoppers have had over the past couple of years, but they lose their star quarterback in Mike White and only return 3 starters on offense. So they have a lot of people to replace on the offensive side of the ball. 7 on defense. The defense could certainly be the strength. But you gotta point in all the factors. They lose their star quarterback. They don't have a lot of returning experience on the offensive side of the ball. They're coming off some negative momentum, losing that bowl game to Georgia State to close out the season. Mike Sanford's entering year 2. He inherited a great team in year 1, but I think this will be one of his toughest coaching jobs yet in year 2, and I think he's going to take up a bit of a step back for Western Kentucky. And And then Charlotte 3-9, 2-6. Not a huge surprise there, but they will be very competitive though. A team that returns 18 starters, not a team that anybody wants to overlook because Charlotte could pull off a few upsets. I still think they're a little bit of ways away from reaching bowl eligibility though. But their quarterback could very well be Evan Sheriffs, possibly a transfer from Miami. So you've got an experienced quarterback there. Last year they went 1-11. This year I do think they improve on that, but just not enough to make a bowl game. Over here in the Western Division, I've got UAB winning it all. I've got UAB winning the Western Division. And I know that could come as a shock to some people, but you have to give a lot of credit to what Bill Clark did with this Blazers team. After, the UAB shut down their football program, they bring it back last year. A lot of people thought they might not even win a game, and if they did, it would just be 1 or 2. I had them pegged at just 3 wins, and they went 8-5. I mean, it was remarkable what Bill Clark did. Won Conference USA Coach of the Year, and rightfully so. This year, though, consider how many stars they had coming back last year after that hiatus that they had away from football. Now they returned 16 starters. They returned A.J. Urdelli at quarterback. They returned Spencer Brown at running back, who rushed over 1,300 yards last year. This is a UAB team that I think could be very, very dangerous, one that could pull off a few upsets, and I have winning the West right now ahead of North Texas, who I have them identical, 9-3 records, 6-2 in conference. North Texas, we all know, winning the West last year, facing off against Florida Atlantic in the Conference USA title game. But this year, I'm giving the edge to UAB. I think they're going to own the edge in the tiebreaker over the Mean Green. North Texas returns plenty of starters as well, 17 overall. One of the better quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the Conference USA in Mason Fine. Had a great year last year, going 9-5. Like I said, made the Conference USA championship game before losing in their bowl game to Troy. They also returned their top 3 wide receivers. So that's huge for a solid quarterback and a solid wide receiving core to maybe make a run in this Western Division. But the defense is the issue. Yes, they return 8 starters. That's huge, but they allowed 35 points per game last year. They're going to really have to lower those numbers if they want to compete against some of these teams in the Western Division and try to get back to the Conference USA title game. I got Louisiana Tech finishing 3rd at 8-4 overall, 6-2. And as you can see, our top 3 teams here all finishing 6-2 in conference play. And obviously through tie-breaking scenarios, this is how it all worked out, the way they're ordered in the Western Division. But still a very, very close race. It could go it's really anybody's game between UAB, North Texas, and Louisiana Tech. I love Jamar Smith for the Bulldogs here with Louisiana Tech, and they get to host UAB. So that's huge. If they can upset UAB, it's very possible they could jump North Texas or jump the Blazers and maybe win the Conference USA Western Division. It's very possible for the Bulldogs to do that. I have a lot of faith in Skip Holtz as a head coach. So Louisiana Tech, certainly not a team anybody can overlook in this Western Division. And like I said, you could really see the fine break between the teams that would contend and the teams that would struggle. And you can see that in both divisions here, really after the first 3 teams. After Middle Tennessee, you see a significant drop-off. After Louisiana Tech, you see a significant drop-off. We got Southern Miss finishing 4th in division at 5-7. And I know Quadra Griggs just got suspended for a little bit, so that's obviously not going to hurt the Eagles' cases there. 5-7, though, somewhat respectable. They lose some key starters as well. They went 8-5 last year, losing to Florida State in their bowl game, but only 4 returning starters on the defensive side of the ball, so that certainly hurts them. They've been to 2 straight bowl games. Jay Hobson has his work cut out for him this year, and I think they're going to just miss out in the bowl game this year, especially with you got that quarterback suspension there, so some things that aren't going the Golden Eagles' way this year, or at least for the start. And I think they're going to fall just short of a bowl game at 5-7. And then Texas San Antonio, Rice, and UTEP, obviously in the cellar of not just the West, but really the entire Conference USA this season. Texas San Antonio went 6-5 last year, was not invited to a bowl game. They lose their star defensive playmaker and Marcus Davenport, a first-round draft pick, to the New Orleans Saints. So, yes, they do have some talent there. They've won 6 games in back-to-back years, but I think they're going to take a significant drop-off, especially with a lot of the talent that they lost. So 3-9 there, and then Rice bringing in a new head coach. I have them finishing 2-11 overall. They've got a new head coach, only 11 starters. They went 1-11 last year, so yes, technically they improve, getting 2 wins this year. And then UTEP also improving. They didn't win a game at all last year, and I actually predicted that going 0-12 last year. It was a horrible year. Yes, they improved to 1-11, but they also have a new coach and 12 returning starters, so they might be a little more competitive, but certainly not in a position to make a bowl game or even jump to 3 or 4 wins. I think it's still a rebuilding year for Rice and UTEP, breaking in new head coaches and a lot of inexperience for both of those teams. And then, of course, in our Conference USA Championship game, I've got Florida Atlantic versus UAB, the two division winners. This game should be a lot more exciting, I think a lot more close than last year's game between Florida Atlantic and North Texas. I'm very excited to see this one. But once again, I've got to go with Lane Kiffin and the Owls. I've got to give them the win the Conference USA Championship game. I think they're just going to have too much talent because, yes, the offense might be a little bit worse than they were last year, but not by much. They're going to rely on Devin Singletary, and I do believe they're going to be able to break in a quarterback that's going to come in and put up some good numbers. So UAB will have a very solid team. They lose this game, they're 9-4, still have a potential for a 10-win season, but I've got Lane Kiffin and his Florida Atlantic Owls winning back-to-back Conference USA Championship games and a potential for an 11-win season come bowl season. So, as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, on Instagram at The Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.